So, I want to talk about the promise of meditation, or start with that. You know, the year that I ordained as a nun at Amaravati Buddhist Monastery, I met Sister Rosemary. She is an Anglican nun from an order called the Sisters of the Love of God. And she had gotten permission from her Mother Superior to come to a Buddhist monastery for the very first sabbatical she had ever had in 20 years in order to learn meditation. I loved her. And, you know, she was a traditional nun with a wimple and a habit, and she had a cross that was this big. And she would come to the monastery, and the culture in the monasteries is that you bow to the Buddha when you enter and when you leave and when you sit down, and we're bowing lots of times. So every time she would bow, her cross would hit the floor. So there was this awesome image of her bowing to the Buddha. Incidentally, you know, at the end she gave this remarkable talk about what was happening for her, and she said that when she first came, the abbot instructed her that when you're bowing to the Buddha, you're bowing to wisdom, truth, and virtue, and she said she didn't have any conflict with that at all. So it was lovely. But we became close, and one of the things is we had deep conversations about many things, and I don't remember when it was, but at one point we were talking, and she said, we were talking about original sin, and she said she thought it played a significant role in the sense of insufficiency and badness for so many under the Judeo-Christian influence. And I thought, wow, you know, that's quite an admonition for somebody in her position. I was impressed that she had the willingness to say that. When I look at our Buddhist thinking, Buddhists believe in original goodness, that who we are essentially is pure awareness, love, and wisdom. And while we have ignorance, and ignorance flows out in these different ways, the ways that it flows out, the lack of skillful behaviors, are all based upon temporary afflictions, and they're not a description of who we are fundamentally. So thinking and feeling influence each other. Beliefs will impact what we think, and our thinking will shape our beliefs. So I came to meditation at 17, and from the beginning I was absolutely convinced that the Buddhist path would relieve my suffering. Profound insights or profound experiences of love and pure awareness showed me that that was possible, yet they would all pass. And what would happen for me is that I would return to a sense of basic badness, that when the insights passed, I felt that fundamentally there was something about me that was bad. So badness, insufficiency, not good enough, feeling like an imposter, feeling like you don't belong here, that it's not okay to exist. There are many, many different ways this shows up for different people. They are all the opposite of our feeling our basic goodness. So I'm a realist, and more importantly than loyalty to tradition, I'm interested in freeing my heart and living with ease and well-being. So I kept looking for frames of reference that would help me understand why I felt this way, give more meaning than what I was being taught in Buddhist philosophy as to what was going on, why my access and stability in my basic goodness was so hard. So about 15 years ago, I started studying attachment theory, and I learned that attachment disturbances are highly resilient. There's about an 85% chance that the attachment pattern of our primary caregiver is the same one that we have. There's a 70% chance that the pattern our great-grandmother had is the same one we have. So what we have is partly what has been given to us. So I want to just highlight that with this, the attachment patterns are not easy to shift. And so with the resilience of these attachment patterns are our capacity to fulfill the promise of meditation and eliminate sorrow, pain, and distress. And so it's also really important to notice that it isn't anyone's fault. Our parents did the best they could with the attachment pattern that they had, that came largely from the attachment pattern their parents had. And it isn't our fault either. It isn't true that we didn't try hard enough. Blame isn't helpful. However, responsibility is. And it's useful to ask the question, what can I do about it now? So I want to talk about some of the components of attachment disturbance, the consequences that are relevant for meditators, and describe a 3-pillar approach that can be used for repair. Before I get into those, I want to look at the word attachment. As Buddhist practitioners, the view of attachment is the unhealthy grasping of desire, unhealthy grasping of anger or views. This kind of attachment is the source of our suffering. We want to reduce it. We want to get rid of it. Psychological attachment is the bonding that forms between a caregiver and a child. And we know that when a child has 5 things, particularly during their formative years from birth to 2 years of age, they become confident exploring the world and who they uniquely are. These 5 things are safety and protection, attunement, emotional soothing, delight in their essence, and encouragement to explore and develop. These qualities lead to a child feeling secure, seen and known, soothed and comforted, valued in their essence, and confident exploring the world and who they uniquely are. When a child is born into circumstances that allow them to have a healthy attachment, they are naturally able to feel their own basic goodness. So children are born as autoregulators, which means that they do not know how to use another person to help them regulate. But when the primary caregivers, like parents or grandparents or whoever is, are reliable enough, then the babies learned to co-regulate with the caregivers. They learn that caregivers will support them to make sense out of the world. They learn what relaxation and safety feel like. When children are seen, valued, and encouraged to be and express themselves as who they uniquely are, they feel good about themselves and expect that people in the world around them will do the same. What we learn when we grow up, we tend to gravitate to relationships where this is what we have as an adult. With this trust and confidence, our basic goodness is very accessible. So I realized that I launched into the talk without having us do a little basic meditation to settle. So it shows you that I'm a little excited and a little bit not grounded myself. So what I want to do is pause right here and invite us just to take a little bit of time and let us settle.
Amma, is there a way for you to increase the volume or put the microphone just a little closer?
The only way to
Your
do that
voice is soft.
is to move the computer. How's that? How's that? Is that better? Okay. So let's just take a moment and pause. No, my mic is not on my earbuds. My mic is attached to a different device so I can record it. Thank you, Susie. My little microphone stopped working last night, unfortunately. So I haven't had a chance to replace it. So just take a moment and notice what you notice. Notice where your posture is. Notice where you are. I'm wondering if the background noise with the birds is making it hard to hear. No? It's just the sound of my voice. I don't know what to do. I don't think I can get any closer. How's that? Is that any better? Is that better?
Maybe just a little bit. When there's a breeze that comes up, sometimes that ruffles the microphone too.
This is not the microphone for the computer. Oh, the
Right.
microphone on this microphone. Okay, thank you. So let's just take a moment and pause. Feel our feet on the ground. Feel the shape of our body. Elongate our spine. And take a couple of deep, cleansing breaths. And then the invitation is to invite relaxation. Relax your feet. You might even let your toes spread out. Feel more contact with the floor. Relax your legs. The muscles on the inside and the outside of your legs. Relax your torso and your pelvic floor. Relax your middle back. And invite your shoulders to drop a fraction. Relax your neck. Relax your jaw. Let your tongue rest in the base of your mouth. Relax your chewing muscles and your smiling muscles just for now. There's no need to have a face or present yourself or be anybody in particular. You can just be exactly as you are. Now with this open, loving, non-judgmental awareness, just notice what you're noticing. How much of your body is available to notice. What kind of feelings that you have. whether you're feeling curious or settled or calm or tired or wondering or sad or grieving. So with an open, loving, non-judgmental awareness, just noticing what you're noticing without asking it to be different in any way. You may notice the sound of my voice and the sounds of the wind and the birds in the background around me. There may be different sounds in your own living space or around you. And just let's see if we can make a commitment to return to this open, loving, non-judgmental space during this time, listening to this talk. During this time together here today. So let's just for a moment invite, if you wish to share in the chat what you're arriving with, what's most noticeable to you. You can have a little bit of shares from everybody who is here today. Happiness, gratitude, warmth and sadness, yes. Grief, yes. Jet lag, yes. Enjoyment, some fantasy, curiosity, fear, sadness and hope. Change of seasons, discombobulation, tiredness, pain, grief, gratitude, belly pain, joy, gratitude, tiredness, hope. Some nervousness that a belief my body considers necessary will be challenged. Sadness, relaxation, curious. Slightly tired, open, feel kind of curious. Joy to see you. Lovely. Thank you. So thank you for sharing. And I can notice that I feel more settled. I'm not quite so buzzy. And I'm going to come back into the talk. So just...
can you go into your audio settings right beside the mute button, that little caret beside the mute button?
Yep.
And the bottom part of the audio called audio settings.
Yep.
And
how about Zoom optimization audio? How's that? Is that better?
That's a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think what I might need to do, I'm wondering if I went inside where there wasn't wind, if that would make it easier.
This is very much better.
That's better? Okay, great. Okay, good. So just, when we're born as autoregulators. And what that means is that we don't know how to be with another person. We have to learn how to do that. And when we have a sufficient amount of reliable support from primary caregivers, and they help us make sense out of the world, then children learn what relaxation and safety feel like. They feel good about themselves, and they expect that people in the world around them will also help them to make sense out of things, to help them support them when there's difficulty. They will feel valued and encouraged, they will feel seen, and they'll gravitate towards relationships that are like that. When we didn't receive good enough care, it means that the above set of needs were not met regularly. To be met regularly means that they are met only about 30% of the time to be good enough. So we're not talking about perfection in order to be securely attached. So not good enough also means that ruptures were not acknowledged or repaired. It could also mean that caregivers caused harm. So when a child is reliant upon someone who is unreliable, dismisses their feelings, rejects or abandons them, when a caregiver uses the child to manage their own feelings, when a child's safety is dependent upon someone who harms them, then the child compensates. And these compensations are what leads to the insecure attachment strategies. In a child, they are called anxious avoidant attachment, anxious ambivalent attachment, or disorganized attachment. As adults, they have slightly different names: dismissive, anxious, and disorganized. These three insecure attachment strategies are all signs of attachment disturbance. So what's really important is to understand that these attachment styles help us make sense out of what is going on in order to keep us safe. Understanding this helps us appreciate how adaptive our survival mechanisms are. They are not an indication of our brokenness. They are a sign of our finding ways to cope with what was very challenging. So this is important for a few reasons. When we learn how our behaviors, relationships, and core beliefs have so much to do with our early attachment patterns, and how resistant those patterns are to changing, it can help us understand why the Buddha's promises that his practice leads to full liberation. And yet for many, even after many, many years of very dedicated practice, we still suffer. Secondly, it's important that as meditators we are reliant upon being able to perceive what is going on in the present moment. And so it's important to understand that there are three ways that attachment disturbances change what we are able to know. According to the work of Stephen Terrell and Kathy Kane, example of these changes are becoming extra alert to signals of danger and missing neutral or positive feelings, living in a faux window of tolerance, looking like we're calm but actually we're anxious, and our interception is impacted. We cannot feel and interpret correctly what is going on. Becoming extra alert means that our system is hyper-aroused and we aren't able to notice the neutral or positive feelings that can help us feel calmer. Actually being calm rather than appearing calm is important in how we are able to manage our internal state. when we cannot feel or interpret correctly what is going on, both of which are essential components of meditation, we have reduced our capacity to make meditative tools effective. Living in a faux window of tolerance means that we do not use methods to calm ourselves because we don't think we need them. And sometimes our therapists and meditation teachers may not notice either. When we routinely miss neutral or positive feelings and live in a faux window of tolerance, stress compounds. Stress increases cortisol levels, impacting blood pressure and heart rate. Our breathing becomes rapid and shallow, causing inflammation, pain, and a myriad of health issues. Our physiology impacts our mind states. The more stress we experience, the more we are primed to look for and see danger, catastrophize, feel anxious, angry, out of control, and overwhelmed. These all contribute to feeling unsafe. Our physiology then drives what we see and do in our relationships and how we feel about what is going on in the world. So when we understand the far-ranging impacts of attachment disturbance, it can motivate us to find ways to repair and return to healthy patterns. So I feel fortunate because I've been hearing lots about attachment work, but I haven't yet heard lots of different ways to repair. And so my gratitude is that I've come across the 3 pillars approach that was founded by Dan Brown and David Elliott. It has 3 components: collaborative co-regulation, restructuring the internal working model of attachment, imagining ideal parents, and enhancing metacognition, or the ability to use the mind to analyze the mind. Collaborative co-regulation is what happens when someone is present with you, sees you, understands you, supports you to know what is going on for yourself and to find more ease and clarity. Co-regulators are relaxed, present, grounded, and bring forward non-judgmental awareness. They can also be protective. Their interest and attention is on you and what is happening for you, what supports you. They can be a therapist, a meditation teacher, a partner, a friend, a spiritual friend. I've had tons of co-regulators from pets, trees, rocks, the ocean, rivers. So as we develop a repertoire of co-regulators, then we have the ability to soothe ourselves more easily. So when I get upset, usually the first thing I do is walk out in nature. Go for a long walk, or sit by a rock, or go by water. And for me, very quickly, I come back into a sense of being able to understand what's happening and then have the capacity to use the cognitive functions of my brain to discern and to frame and to figure out what I need to do next. So Dan Brown was a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, and he spent lots of time with Mahamudra practice. And instead of visualizing deities, he began to understand the importance of imagining parents that bring us exactly what we didn't get, the things that we needed. So imagining parents that are extremely well-resourced, attuned, and supportive, that they are safe, that they delight seeing you, and that they celebrate in your unique qualities, that they're absolutely exactly what's needed to encourage you. And the way that they talk to you, the way that they touch you, the way that they are in proximity to you, is exactly what you need for your system to calm and to soothe and to relax. So one of the reasons why this works is because there's actually hardly any difference between what is imagined and what is really happening in terms of our nervous system and our physiology to differentiate the two. So when we imagine all of these things happening, then our mind-body experiences as if it is happening in the present time, as if it's real. The more we have experiences of being seen, of being heard, of being attuned, of being celebrated, of being encouraged, the more we begin to get it that that is our experience rather than the opposite. And as we begin to get it that that's our experience, we begin to have a little bit of a crowbar, of a leverage in the areas where those things were not met. So David Elliott is a clinical psychologist from Harvard. He comes from the model that it's really important to work with a therapist, because as a therapist gets to know you better, they can help in a very particular way. But he's also understanding that if you limit it to only people who can have access to clinical psychologists, it's going to be very limited in terms of how many people are going to be able to make use of this. So when I contacted him, I said that I was interested in my own work, and I was also interested in creating a meditative-based attachment repair program, which I'll talk about more later. So, the third pillar, or mentalization, or metacognition, really is a fancy word for insight meditation. Metacognition is learning how to differentiate between our perceived experience and what is actually happening. And so this is where we can leverage our Vipassana meditation practice and the foundations of mindfulness. And so if we are upset and we're sad, and we shift from the thoughts and the feelings to the body sensations that underpin the sadness and the feeling, we move from observing thoughts and feelings to body sensations, where it makes it easier to stay present without getting caught by a whirlwind of associative thoughts and associative feelings. Following a whirlwind can lead to further states of powerlessness or feelings of despair. So in the case of sadness, that's what's actually happening. The despair or the feelings of powerlessness can come from the way that we relate to the sadness. And so in this example, getting caught in a whirlwind of thoughts about all the reasons why we can feel sad can undermine our ability to just be present with the direct experience, be wise and compassionate with what's happening in the present moment. So this capacity for mentalization for somebody who's securely attached is orders of magnitude faster and more accurate than for someone who has attachment disturbance. As the mentalization capacity increases in accuracy and speed, an individual is able to know what they're feeling and sensing and make sense out of what's happening internally as well as relationally. This then leads to more capacity to soothe oneself. It also means that the greater the capacity for mentalization, the more an individual will be able to use meditation tools effectively. It also means that as one's capacity is greater, one's ability to know and communicate what's going on, to observe what you notice in another, to resolve differences of perception and repair ruptures. And all of these are critical in healthy relationships. So statistically, a majority of children worldwide have good enough caregivers and are securely attached. If, like me, that was not your circumstance, We can apply these 3 pillars, and this means that you become more able to notice when you feel unsafe, more able to soothe yourself, and as you experience more safety, your basic stress levels decrease. You have more capacity to connect with your innate basic goodness and make choices and live from there. So this innate basic goodness, which is our birthright that the Buddha described, is not available to us when we are experiencing so much stress. We can't feel ourselves. We can't soothe ourselves. And our basic place of default is fear. And so in order to return to our basic goodness, we need to look and see what's getting in the way of it. And as powerful as meditation has been for me in all of the many ways that it has offered me tools and support, insights, have given me the ability to train my mind and to shift frames of reference, I can also see that this work with changing the attachment formation has been a game changer in terms of my ability to relax, to come out of activation. And more importantly, I'm no longer going into a place where I feel that I'm fundamentally bad. And that makes a big difference. So what I would like to do now is offer a guided meditation. And so before I do that, I just want to give you a couple of minutes to take some notes if you have any questions, because I'm not going to be answering them now. I'll be answering them in the second part when we reconvene after our 30-minute walking meditation and bio break. So I'd just like to give you a couple of minutes to make notes if after this talk you've got questions that you would like to ask. Cheryl, while we're waiting for that, how's the sound quality now?
For me, it's good. You can ask people to put it in the chat if it's difficult.
So can I hear if it's still difficult for anybody? Okay. Some difficulty. I'm not sure what I can do. A little echo. I'm not sure what I can do about that. Let me go back into the audio settings one more time and see if I can fiddle.
Someone else is saying the sound is good, and somebody else says no problem, we love the birds.
Okay. How's that? Is that any better?
Somebody else says not perfect but understandable.
Okay. How about that? Is that any better? You're muted for Cheryl.
Yeah, I think it's good enough.
Good enough. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not great, but
Not,
it's good enough. Okay.
well, it's not perfect. It's just a little tiny warble.
Yeah, well, Costa Rica, perfect. Oh my goodness.
Okay, somebody else says that appears to be better.
Okay, so once again, I'd like to invite you into a posture that allows you to be relaxed. For many, it'll be sitting. There might be some of you who need to lie down if you've got back pain. And again, I would like to invite you just to notice your feet and the contact with the floor. And see if you can sense the earth underneath the floor. And allow your weight to help make you feel heavy and that you're pulling into the earth, into gravity. And just noticing your body shape. And again, taking a couple of moments and relaxing. Relaxing your feet, your legs, your pelvic floor. Relaxing the muscles along your back, your spine, letting your shoulders drop a little bit more. Relaxing your tongue in the lower part of your mouth, and notice what happens when you do that. Relaxing your chewing muscles and your smiling muscles. And again, there's no need to put on a face or impress anybody right now. You can be just exactly as you are. Relaxing your eyes and behind your eyes. And just allowing your attention to turn inwards to sense and feel and know what's happening for you right now. So awareness is non-judgmental, open, receptive, allowing. like to invite you just to bring forward the benevolence of the earth as a support, holding you. Just invoke the image of pets or beautiful places in nature where you feel safe. And the ancestors of the land, the first people of the land where you are. Inviting their wisdom and their blessing, their support, just at this time, this meditation time now. So that we create a field into which we can relax. Natural elements of ancestors, of the healthy ancestors of our past, of our sanghas and friends and family and loved ones, that we can just imagine them around us so that we do not feel alone, that we feel the power of our practice is suffused with the blessing power of these different elements. And just notice if there's any difference in doing this. What does it feel like? In what ways does it feel different? What do you notice? So awareness continues to be awareness, but when we invoke it into a field that is supported, sometimes we can notice a difference in the way that we experience ourselves, the way that we experience the quality of knowing, the quality of awareness, in which we can relax perhaps a little bit more, trust a little bit more, feel a little bit more support and safety. Now, as you are sitting here, I'd like you to just gently turn your attention to a physical sensation that's pleasant. It might be a feeling of warmth, or a feeling of ease, or a feeling of wetness in your mouth or in your eyes, or a fullness in your belly after having something to drink or eat. And just allow your attention to stay with the pleasantness of it. Enjoy the pleasantness of it. Focus on the pleasantness of it. And as you focus your attention on the pleasantness, you may notice that there are some things that become more sharp. There are some things that might stay the same. There are some things that may change. Some things might get dimmer, fade away. But the commitment is to stay with what it is that you notice. And so let's drop that pleasant sensation and just come back to an anchor that's familiar to you. It might be the breath, it might be a touch sensation, the feet on the floor, your hands on contact with your body. It might be a sound. Just staying with this anchor for a couple of breaths. And now I invite you to very gently move your attention in the direction of something that's a little bit unpleasant. It might be a twinge or a sharpness or something that's a little too hot or some pressure. And just come to the edge of it. And notice it might be that as you come to the edge of it, you already notice that there's a small contraction. And then move away. Come back to the anchor, the breath or the sound. And again, I invite you to bring your attention and bring it towards an unpleasant sensation, and it may be the same one. And as you very slowly move your attention towards the sensation, notice if there's any gripping or resistance or tightening in another part of your body, or some apprehension in your mind as you move towards it. And that's enough. Leave it. Come back to what's neutral or mildly pleasant, your anchor, the breath. Now this time, the invitation is to move towards an unpleasant sensation, and again, it can be the same one if it's still there. And just stay with it, noticing if it's possible to notice the feelings, the resistances, the not wanting, the wishing it was otherwise, the associations of what it means and why it's there. And every time, just come back to the direct experience of the physical sensation. And notice what happens. If the resistance gets bigger or falls away. If the associative thoughts get stronger or fall away. Now leave it. Come back to your anchor, your breath, contact, sounds. Now allow your attention to move into something that's pleasant, a pleasant sensation. And notice the difference between what happens to your reaction to pleasant and your reaction to pain or unpleasant. Without any judgment, just observing the difference. What is it like for you to bring your attention to what is pleasant? What is it like for you to bring your attention to what is unpleasant? So our physical body is easier sometimes to be with than our emotional or mental experiences. Not that it's always pleasant, but it can be less sticky. For this reason, body awareness can be really helpful. Just to come back to, ground ourselves in, return to regularly. So now I'd like to invite you to shift your frame of reference from physical to noticing a feeling that you have, an emotion that you have. If there's any sadness or any curiosity or any grief or any fear present. So notice it. And then see if you can locate where you are experiencing that emotion in your body. Does there have a place? Is there some physical part of your body that you're experiencing it? And shift from the emotion to the physical correlate of where you are experiencing the emotion, if that's available to you, if you have one, if you can locate one. And so do you notice any difference between bringing attention to the direct experience of the emotion or bringing your attention to the physical correlate of how you know you are experiencing the emotion? What's important is to notice that you can be attentive to the emotions you have in these different ways. And then there's another way that you can be attentive. You can just notice if it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So if you go to an emotion that you have, and then shift from focusing on the emotion to just noticing, is it pleasant, is it unpleasant, or is it neutral? And it might be helpful just very softly in the back of your mind to just note pleasant, pleasant, unpleasant, unpleasant, neutral, neutral. Come back to your breath or your anchor and take a couple of breaths and noticing what you notice now. So in our human experience, there's so many different kinds of ways that we can feel sad or happy or scared or hopeful or inspired or doubtful or insufficient or hungry, longing, restless, angry, grief-stricken, heartbroken, loving, kind, compassionate. And we can experiencing different things at different times, and it can be changeable. And when we have a way to make it simpler, is it pleasant, is it unpleasant, is it neutral? And that can give us a little bit more space to metabolize some of the complexity that we have going on. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? And when we have more capacity to metabolize what's going on and more space, then it makes it a little bit more possible to respond with wisdom and compassion to what's arising. So these three frames of reference, the physical experience, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral of experience, emotions, beliefs, thoughts, so that if something arises and it takes our attention and we get lost because of the associative thoughts and feelings, we can shift our frame of reference to something a little bit simpler. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? Where in my body am I experiencing this now? Asking those questions helps us then say, what is a wise and compassionate response? If I'm anxious, do I need to put my hand on my heart and feel the support? Do I need to focus on the field around me that is loving and supportive? Bring my attention to the earth or the elements, the rocks. What do I need right now? What is a wise and compassionate response to what's happening? And if things are very still and very quiet and there's not much going on, just stay with the stillness and the quiet and your primary anchor. Enjoy it. So again, bringing your attention to your body, feeling your feet, feeling your weight, feeling the shape you occupy. Notice how much of your body sensations are available to you. Notice the quality of feelings that are present now. And reconnect with the field that we started with, the earth, the ancestors, benevolent beings in human form, in animal form, in plant form, the love and the connection of your family and your friends and your sanghas, your communities. And so again, remembering that it is possible to stay connected to this open, loving, non-judgmental awareness. As we shift from our formal meditation practice to what happens next.